Hi, this is Laurie Mangold, and we are going to talk about the advanced block. This is officially month 5 of the advanced program, but rectangle number 3. So I kind of refer to them both ways. I'm not going to actually physically cut this block, but I am going to go through the cutting with you because it's a very simple, I think, and straightforward block to cut. So if, as you notice, can you see the paper, Michelle? I have really laid out the different colors. So the first color we're going to cut relates to this first square here. These, we're going to make 3 square and a square blocks. And square and a square is the skill we covered in depth in this monthly block. So you can go watch the video for the monthly block. I show how to do the square and a square. We also have a skill video out there on square and a square. So there is a huge amount of information for you to go out and watch and learn how to do that. But this square in your packet's approximately 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, and you're going to cut it down to 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. So you're creating a square 4 3/4. Okay. Again, because we're doing square and a square, these measurements seem odd. They can be a little tricky to cut, but that's what happens when you work with triangles. Now, color 2 and 3 are both right here, okay? And so these two point to these instructions that you are going to cut. So the first thing you're going to do is cut a 4 3/4 inch strip off of this, and then you're going to cut a 2-inch strip off of it, okay? And we're going to do that with both of these colors, and they relate to these two colors here. Then you're going to take your 4 3/4 inch piece and cut it into a 4 3/4 inch square. And you're going to cut your strip down to 6 1/2 inches. So pretty straightforward, and you're going to do it with both colors. Then we have 2 little strips here that aren't one of the squares, so you're going to take those 2 colors, color 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you're just going to cut a 2-inch by 6 1/2 inch strip out of there. So this is all straightforward. The only thing that's a little different is that I've got these pointing saying you're going to do that with both these pieces. So don't let that throw you. Then on the background fabric, or I hate to call it background fabric, but the neutral fabric, like every month with the rectangles, we have to cut 2 3 1/2 by 24 1/2 inch strips. Okay, and however you want to do that, I will be honest, I cut mine into the 3 1/2s, and then I put them on top of each other, and my ruler is exactly 24 1/2 inches long, so I just get that down, make sure everything's straight, and cut at both ends is the easiest way I have found to cut these. Okay, then you're going to need to cut 6 3 7/8 inch square. We have 2 separate pieces in there. So you're going to cut 3 7/8, 3 7/8, 3 7/8, and then turn them on the side and cut them into 3 7/8 inch square, either with a square ruler or your straight ruler. You're going to take all of those squares and cut them on one diagonal, which is going to give you 6 times 2 is 12 triangles. Okay? Now, you have to decide at this point, when we go to do the square and a square, are you going to clip the corners on these triangles, or are you going to work with them pointy? That's your choice, either way. But I will tell you that I really recommend that you take the Marty Michelle point trimmer or corner trimmer, and you trim off pre-trim all of the points, and I think your block will go together much easier for you. Okay, I was telling Michelle this morning that I have never had a sewing night like I had last night, where everything I sewed on this block came out perfect. No points clipped off, measured exactly the way it was supposed to measure. So I would do that again any day. I didn't want to stop sewing, actually. So the square and the square, as we have shown you before, you're going to start, and I'm going to grab some of my pieces from the last video here. You're going to start by sewing triangles on opposite sides of your square. So in this case, I sewed this one and this one on first, and then I pressed. Now, just like in the weekly or the regular video, the first thing you have to do is establish the center of this square. And I know people were concerned when I fold them and create a crease, but all of these had hard creases in them. And in pressing the block when I got done, all the creases have disappeared. So don't be too afraid of that. So press your creases in, and then when you line your two opposite pieces up, make sure you're lining them up on the crease first, and then you're getting your outside edges lined up. So do opposite sides. You're going to do this side and this side. So here and here, press that, and then come back and do these two opposite sides. This square needs to measure 6.5 inches, and it's really important that you measure that and make sure it's very close. It may be a little wonky, and don't stress too much if it's a little tiny bit wonky, but if it's more than 1/8 of an inch off wonky, then you may want to pull the triangles off and try again. Once you get these 3 made, you are going to then sew your 2-inch strips in between them. Now, there's a color pattern on the pattern itself, where to put the colors, but as you know me, I really don't care. You can mix and match these as any way you want that's pleasing to you. It's fine with me, whichever way you choose to do it, okay? The other thing I want to address is when you get this made, it should measure 24.5 inches, is sewing your border strip on, or your top and bottom strip. I don't know if I've really covered this, but one of the things that's important is that when you put this strip on, that it may not be 100% perfect. You know these are 24 inches, and so what I always do is I start by pinning the center. So if I fold this 24.5, if I fold this in half and figure out where the center is, I know that this point is the exact center of this rectangle. I'm going to line those two things up to start, because that way, if one of them is not quite accurate, especially you may run into that this center might be slightly off, we're going to spread that distance through the whole block. Okay, so I start there, and then I come out and I find my end, and I pin my end. There they are. My end next, okay, and I'm going to come over here and pin my end. So now essentially what I'm doing is I'm blocking the center to the border, because one of them may be a little shorter or longer than the other, but if I force them to be equal, now in between, if I just pull slightly, I'm not stretching, I'm just pulling it taut a little bit, I can come back in and I can pin in between. And what I'm also feeling for is, I used them all, thank you very much, Michelle. I'm also feeling that any of my seam allowances that are underneath here, I pin down so that as I sew over them, they don't flip over, okay? Now, I pinned that on that side, but in reality, I should have been pinning from this side, because when I sew this on, I'm going to want to sew on this side. So each one of these points, when I come to it, I'm going to make sure that as I sew, I wish I had a pen here, I'm going to be right above that X in this block. And then I can also watch as I sew that these things don't flip over on me. So I really should have pinned it on. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that. Okay. So when I sew, I want to be just above that intersection right there. And then I'm going to do that for every one when it comes down. And I'm a pinner, I admit it, I would pin all of these seam allowances down. And then when I got it done, then you're just going to flip it up. And you're going to take your iron and gently do this. Probably before I pressed it, I checked all my points. The only one that I'm slightly disappointed with, this one's dead on, this one's dead on. This one I've got a little bit of the fabric between it. It means I was a little bit high. Personally, I'd much rather be high than short, and so I don't lock my points off. But once I get this one sewn on, I'm just going to take this off now and show you. It is a really fun block, and it's very, I think it's really pretty. And it's relatively quick and easy to make. So if I do that, look how pretty that is, Michelle. Okay. I'm really loving the Tula in this program. I like all the bright colors. It may be busy for some of you. I actually like all the pretty colors, but this one is speaking to me this year. So that's your big block. I think you'll do fine with it. If you have any questions, you can always call the store. But good luck, and I'll see you next month.